Chapter 110 A Tale of Thieves. It's the last job, Kate, then we can retire. Get that land you dreamed of and never work another day in our lives. Kate crosses her arms and turns her head wistfully. Her instinct had never failed her, and, right now, it told her that it was a bad idea. It's too risky. We can just hit a few more banks and use the cash to disappear. Not smart, darling. You never know how many rich folks you can piss off before they send the cables after you, and without a specific fence we would have to sell the stuff at a discount. The Hell's Gates are held by vampires, Chris. Not mages or mundane humans. Vampires. You know what they say. We'll just leave them to their games and blood drinking with the other guests. No need to get close. We get in, do the job, then get out. 1 hour tops. We already have someone in. Griggs? He did it, yes. The mark will leave him a uniform. Kate stood abruptly. The simple bed of their rented room creaked under the sudden move and Chris backed off with a yelp. She held an accusing finger under his nose. You took it. You took the contract. Her brown ringlets shook with fury. You did it behind my back. Chris brushed his scruffy blonde hair back, giving her a disarming smile. The gesture used to make her swoon. Now it only made her mad. Don't you try to act cute. You took such an important decision without checking with me first. You know we cannot back down on a contract with one of the covens. Relax, darling, everything's already planned. You only need to get in and do your magic, as usual. We'll take care of the rest. Kate seethed in silence. She hated this heist. She also hated that she was dismissed and that Chris had gone ahead without her approval. He had always been the brain of the outfit, but things were supposed to be different now. They were supposed to be a couple and a couple did things together, not behind each other's back. This is the last time, Chris. It is. I promise. Kate wanted to believe him. The cellar under their safe house was Chris' domain. He was moving with confidence from the table to a map pinned against the wall, then to the supplies spread on the ground near the entrance. Never did he look more alive than when he planned a deed. Under the pressure, he would gain an intensity that Kate loved. His passion was infectious and affected the whole group, pushing them to outdo themselves. It was that fiery passion that had captured her heart. Sometimes, a small voice would tell her that Chris was not meant for the family life she envisioned, that he would wilt without the constant challenges that the criminal life brought him. She would push it away, but it would keep coming back. Let's start with the introductions, since we have a new member joining us tonight. Her lover started with a dazzling smile as the group gathered around the table. Our newcomer is Father McCormick. He will be covering us if things go wrong. Kate eyed the latest addition to their merry band. The father was a man in his 50s with a white beard wearing the black and white collar of Catholic priests. Her aura control was decent for someone without formal training, and she could tell he was image like herself. There were not a lot of Castor priests that she knew of, but, well, it was a big world out there. The good father will cover our retreat from the vampires if things go south. He assured me that crosses stop them. Isn't that right, Father? Not stop them so much as slow them down, the man grumbled. You don't stop vampires at night. You hold the cross and hope they don't find a way to flank you before you close the door. Have you faced one before? Kate asked. The older gentleman stared at her with undisguised annoyance. His next comment dripped with disdain. Since you lot allow women to interrupt your discussions, I will oblige. Some associates and I faced what they call a courtier. We managed to wound and repulse him, but not before he managed to get one of us. And it takes silver bullets to hurt one to begin with, he continued as he opened his vest to reveal a pistol's handle. We didn't even see him move. That's what we're dealing with if they find us out. Father McCormick will only join us on the last leg of the missions. If it looks like we were made before that, we bail. Let's not get carried away. I need the money, their old-time partner Griggs added with a radiant smile. Kate made the mistake of meeting his eyes. The green pools captured her in their murky depths, and she felt herself drifting before she regained control. She shook her head. It was not his fault. He could not control it, she told herself. Another part of her whispered that he made no effort to do so, and that she would not trust him around any woman she knew. She silenced that voice as well. Griggs shook his handsome face, long dark hair fluttering artfully. "I guess it's my turn then, old man. I'm Griggs. I'm the infiltrator. I'll get us through the first part of the mission." The priest frowned. "You wield power as well," he stated. Griggs' answer was to flip a card from the deck he always kept, one of the many queer habits that rubbed Kate the wrong way. "King of Hearts. There are many who find me irresistible. Only because he left them little choice. In a perfect world, someone would have gouged his eyes out. Only Chris promised that he would never touch her," soothed Kate, enough to trust him on a heist, if barely. "And I am Moreau. Nice to meet you," the only dark-skinned man at the table interrupted with a disapproving glare. Moreau had been the mover of the team for almost 2 years now. Kate was unsure as to why he kept working with them. She believed it had something to do with money, since he still had the same ratty clothes despite the hauls they had already made. "Moreau will stay with the carriage next to our exit and make sure that we do not dally. As for my dearest Kate, she has a special set of skills that will get us in the basement," Chris continued smoothly. "Does she, now?" McCormick asked with clear doubt. Kate felt anger settle as a tight ball inside her stomach, but she would not say anything. It annoyed her that Chris let a newcomer doubt her skills, just as it annoyed her that he would introduce her instead of letting her do it herself. She settled with crossing her arms and looking as disdainful as she could. It worked, if the stupid priest's reddening face was any indication. "And now for the plan," Chris exclaimed with an enthusiasm that no friction could shake. "Our dear Griggs made contact with one of the attendants. He convinced her to hire him for the occasion as a waiter. Fortunately, their staff includes several groups working together, so an unfamiliar face will be nothing too strange. I also worked there for 3 days preparing the stage and nobody noticed anything. There are more than 40 members of the staff slaving away to accommodate the guests right now," the infiltrator added, flipping a jack of spades from his deck. "They won't notice a thing. While your confidence is commendable, my dear Griggs, this only concerns the upper floors of the complex," Chris continued with a disapproving tone. "There are 2 stories above the main ground, plus a small attic under the roof. The auction will take place there, in a circular room at the heart of the building. The pieces will be brought one by one from the underground vault under escort. We will intercept it on the way." He moved to the wall and started pointing at a map. The pinned papers showed the main floor and an expansive basement. "Griggs will get in first and work normally. When the auction begins, Kate and I will come in as regular guests." Their 2 seats had cost them $300, Kate thought bitterly. "We will join our lodge first, pretend everything is normal. Then Kate will feign sickness and Griggs will escort her to the infirmary situated right next to the main entrance to the lower level. She will do her thing and bypass their security when their alarm deactivates, which is every time they open the doors to let an item through." "How do you know all of this?" McCormick asked with some doubt. "Alva is part of the retinue of the organizer, a vampire named Isaac. She was made aware of their security protocol in case she needs to evacuate," Griggs explained. "And the vampire just told her? She has served his, her, plan, for her whole life. Her defenses were solid, and she even had a protective amulet. He must have trusted her quite a bit, but as I mentioned, I am irresistible." That meant that he had used his full power. After Griggs finished with Alva, she would be a babbling wreck. The violation bothered Kate on a deep level, but she told herself that the woman deserved it for serving a monster. What person in their right mind would work for an abomination? Alva had made herself an enemy of mankind and she would face the consequences. That was all there was to it, really. The thought comforted Kate somewhat. She confessed everything. "We know most of their security measures, except for the vault. Which is why we won't go in there," Chris explained. "Kate will follow the main corridor. Here," he continued, showing her path on the map. "Then turn right into the first room where Griggs will have left the spare uniform and a key under the cupboard." "Why not use the trick that gets her past the guard in the corridor?" McCormick interrupted. "It's exhausting," she curtly replied before Chris could do it for her. Right. McCormick, there will be time for questions afterward. The servant uniform will allow Kate to move relatively unimpeded. They have one patrol and a pair of maids who are supposed to stay there for the whole night. The disguise will serve well in avoiding their attention. Though, make sure that they don't get a good look at you, he told Kate. In the meanwhile, Griggs will return to the main room so as to not attract attention. Kate will go there, he added while pointing at a specific spot. The group bent over the table to inspect a small room leading to what appeared to be a tunnel. The ground here is very wet. The basement was modified to redirect humidity to a reservoir in this room, which they empty regularly through that passage here. It leads outside. The key opens the secured gate between the two. Do not lose it, because the gate is heavily enchanted and you won't be able to open the door without it. Understood. But why not open the escape tunnel from the outside? Kate asked. An alarm will trigger if the key leaves the compound. Now, the tunnel I mentioned doubles as an escape path leading all the way to a canal. I will exit the building and link up with Moreau and McCormick as soon as Kate is through. We will circle around, and the priest and I will get in through the emergency exit. Once there, we will wait and intercept the people carrying the heart on their way to the exit. They function by pair, with one pair carrying goods up with the other patrolling the basement. They swap with each new item. His expression grew more serious. This is obviously the most delicate part of the heist, but we have little choice. It does sound risky, Griggs mutters while biting his thumb. He mechanically flipped a card. 2 of clubs. Kate shivered. Not that risky, Chris calmly stated. The basement is soundproof and only has 4 guards at any time, 2 of whom will stay in front of the vault at all times. The basement is large enough that a small scuffle could remain unheard. After we disable the carrying pair, we will have some time to escape via the emergency exit. This is also where the plan branches. If it looks like we are made at any point before that, we escape, but if we manage to grab the heart, we can escape even if the alarm is rung. You see, the entrance can be blocked by leaving the key half turned in the lock, from the outside, he finished with a ghastly smile. That sounds like a big oversight, Kate remarked under her breath. That's what Alva said, Griggs answered, and the other laughed as if it was funny. They amused themselves for a few seconds, before Kate's glare pushed Chris to resume the briefing. Right. We all leave through the exit except Griggs, who will just stay long enough not to arouse suspicion before leaving on his own. We reconvene here after the deed. Any questions? How will you disable the guards? Moreau asked with a frown. He was the most adverse to loss of life after Kate. McCormick has a disabling spell and I have my truncheon. The guards will be caught off guard. They are well trained but they are not mages and should have no adequate defenses against spells. How is their security looking? It won't help if the vampire goes to pick up the heart in person, McCormick commented while consulting the map. They have around 24 guards, most of whom will be outside or patrolling the upper floors. As for the vampires, Alva said that they would remain around the guests. Vampires. Plural. The priest answered with obvious concern. There will be 3 of them. Isaac is the organizer, and he will present the items himself, therefore, he should not leave their auction room. The second one is called Do, and he acts as the muscle. Big guy. He looks like he wrestles bears for breakfast. The last one is called Ariane, and Alva said she and Isaac knew each other from before. She appears harmless, but she's still a vampire, so we need to be careful. She is the one who will be roaming around, so we should keep an eye out for her. No matter what, the guarded, alarmed entrance is the only way to the vault, and they probably trust it to keep intruders away. We would have no way through without Kate. They don't got last names? Moreau asks. Kate raised her brows in surprise. Moreau usually stayed quiet unless he had specific questions about the plan. She thought that he did not fully approve of what they were doing. I don't think so. Apparently one vampire has one name and they don't share. It works because there are not that many of them. They are monsters, you can't expect them to act like proper Christian folks, Griggs commented, and the others laughed again. Kate thought that they would be laughing much less when they met the real deal, even if those monsters could not be as bad as the rumors made them to be. Still worried? Chris asked after they were alone upstairs. His voice betrayed his seriousness, Kate could tell. It wavered slightly. He cared about her opinion. She shrugged. Of course I am. Your harebrained schemes will be the end of you, one day. But you will still go with it. She rolled her eyes. Yes, you convinced me, oh great genius you. Chris chuckled knowingly and the familiar sound warmed her heart. He had this look, the one where he had something more planned. He walked to their chest and threw it open. From there, he withdrew a package in a linen bag she had never seen before. What's this? She asked with trepidation. We can't have all those rich bastards looking down on my pretty girl, so I got you a present. Kate opened the package with all the excitement of a little girl to reveal a dress, and what a dress it was. Dark green taffeta with sequins sewn at the shoulders, a tapered waist and a big, flaring hem. It would cover her breast yet leave the shoulders bare. It looked fit for a princess. She threw herself in the arms of her lover. Oh, Chris. It is wonderful. And my size. How did you manage it? I have my resources, he gloated with relish. As for your body, I have a passing knowledge of it, he finished, his hands trailing down to rest on her thighs. You are incorrigible. Inside, she felt more confident. She had a perfect pendant of nephrite and gold to match the outfit, and she would wear her hair high, with 2 waves of brown ringlets falling on either side. She would look great. She would look the part. Kate did not feel confident at all. The auction hall had appeared at the corner of a street like an ephemeral palace from a fairy tale, as if it would disappear on the 12th stroke of midnight. It blazed gloriously with gas lights, clad in haughty confidence. The walls were sheer and neatly painted. They defied the city's squalor with their unexpected perfection. And the guards. They were working around in pairs, holding lanterns and muskets, all princely in their pressed uniforms and shiny buttons. It was no longer a normal building. It had become, in her mind, the domain of some Austrian prince who had deigned to open it to the commoners for one night. Chris felt her waver. He gave her arm a squeeze, and she forced herself to affect the confidence she did not feel. She was image, damn it, she belonged here. Or so she tried to tell herself. The ugly truth was that she was in way over her head. They all were. She had one nifty spell and that was it. The rest were trash invocations she had picked up here and there. Only her experience let her keep her composure when they climbed up fancy stairs to wide-open gates. She affected polite disdain when Chris gave their invitations to a serious butler in a suit so well-tailored, it must have cost an arm. Then they were in and she could not help but gasp. Kate had attended receptions before, mingled with the wives of bankers and landowners. This was a whole other level. The ceiling was so high and the room so large, you could fit her whole childhood home in there. The ground was covered in tiles that made some sort of mask and the place smelled exquisite, a delicate fragrance of vanilla, like some of those pricey perfumes one of her marks used to douse herself with. It took all of her willpower not to gap like a bumpkin. The guests were fine too. Chris and her had joined the queue. She fixed her eyes on the wide shoulder of an old man in front of her. He was wearing a suit of cobalt blue, and the aura he emanated was incredible. She felt that she could hold her hand before her and her fingers would freeze and blacken before she could even reach his shoulder. It was that strong. And it was carefully controlled too. She took a deep breath and tried to relax as the line moved on. There were only 2 groups left when she heard a commotion. The man in front of her took a step back and she angled to the side to have a look at the disturbance. A young woman was standing at the base of a double set of stairs, dressed in a magnificent lavender gown that embraced her forms in a way that was both daring and modest. She was calmly addressing a trio of burly men in matching brown coats. A tall lad with a wide mustache covered her side, his expression alternating between flustered and angry. As I previously mentioned, you may keep your foci but your firearms must be left at the concierge. You will recover them when you leave. I'm not disarming myself with you around, vampire. Kate's eyes widened. This was the vampire. She appeared so normal. Her cheeks showed a light pink flush and she breathed and blinked normally. Not at all how Kate imagined her to be. Perhaps that was part of the disguise. Approach unsuspecting men and bite them when they leaned in for a kiss. Your safety is guaranteed as a guest for tonight. I will ask you to comply, otherwise we will not grant you access to the facilities. You think to stop us? I'd like to see you, Nu. The mustache man interrupted with a terrible bellow. The loud voice silenced the whispers of the assembly, such was the desperation it conveyed. Don't say it. Don't finish that sentence. You really don't want to do that, he hastily continued while growing red in the face. The woman had tilted her head and was staring at him curiously. She's bound by the rules of hospitality so long as you keep your mouth shut and don't do anything. I swear I saw a man tell her you're welcome to try from inside his house because he thought himself safe. It counted as an invitation. He died the next second. Don't mess with semantics when you're around her. Just don't. The man's concern was so heartfelt that Kate, who had interacted with many grifters throughout the years, found herself convinced of his honesty. Here was a man who had seen much, she thought. Here was a man who had seen enough. At least for tonight. The trio of thugs remained ambivalent. She could see the tension in their backs. The vampire tooted once and something peculiar happened. She started to talk and as she did, she changed. Her skin gained an unearthly pallor and her poise, once demure, turned almost predatory. If you wish to keep your pistols to defend yourselves from me, I promise you, she said, and she smiled. It was ghastly. Canines, no, fangs, were revealed by the withdrawal of her carmine lips like knives laid bare. Her eyes were half-lidded now, and reminded Kate of a waiting cat. That they would not help. A cold wave washed over Kate. She and most of the other mages took a reflexive step back. She was reminded of opening the door in winter, at night. There was nothing in front of her but darkness and a biting cold that froze her to the marrow. That did it. The three men moved to the concierge without a word. Her gaze followed them before she turned her attention to the next guest. Her expression reverted to its previous preppy self as if nothing had happened. The old man had not stepped back before the onslaught. He strutted forward and Kate realized that he had a girl by his side, a pretty thing with a curious strand of white hair on her otherwise dark mop. The tensions must have addled her mind. She immediately remarked that the companion was young enough to be his granddaughter. Disgusting. Ariane. Are you making a habit of bullying the younglings? He exclaimed in a raucous voice. Kate half expected the vampire to jump on him. Instead, she returned a disarming smile, sans the fangs this time. Frost. Always a pleasure to see you. Have you reconsidered my offer? Nope. I will stay as is, thank you very much. A shame. Ah, do not mind me. It is such a pleasure to see you again. And you brought your granddaughter with you. Welcome, Margaret, how are you doing? Oh. It seemed that Kate had judged him too hastily. Fairly good, Lady Ariane, thank you. Grandpa has been training me with ice magic. It won't be so easy for you next time. She proudly answered. I will be looking forward to it, the vampire replied without malice. There was no trace of her earlier hostility. By the way, Ariane, you still owe me one glorious death in battle. The old man said again. You will have to forgive me, kind sir, a horde of werewolves failed to deliver, so the task is harder than I thought. Rest assured that I will notify you of any heroic last stands I come across. Damn right you should. The powerful old man, apparently named Frost of all things, went on soon after, and it was Chris in her turn. The experienced burglar handed the vampire their invitation with a flourish and a grin, which the monster returned affably. Is this your first time attending a Rosenthal event? She asked. It is. I would like to remind you of the rules, then. You are allowed to keep your foci, if you have any, and cast defensive spells if you believe that you are in danger. All other weapons must be left to the concierge. Any attack on staff or guests will be met swiftly and decisively. If your behavior interferes with the conduct of the event, you will be made to leave. Your safety and comfort are guaranteed by Clan Rosenthal for the duration of your stay. If you have any questions, feel free to consult a member of the staff. Do enjoy your evening." She returned the invitation and they left without a word. Kate allowed herself a sigh of relief. The vampire made her uncomfortable. They made their way up the flight of stairs, then to another further on the side. The second-floor promenade around the central area was draped in dark banners displaying a coat of arms that, she assumed, represented the clan hosting them tonight. They passed by other mages and mundans and fineries as exotic as they were strange. There were even natives. She supposed vampires had no need to fear savages. Chris opened a small door, and they went into the auction room. Kate's breath caught up in her chest from the spectacle before her. They were in a tiny lodge with only 2 seats, one of many dotting the walls around the central pit. The only furniture was a small coffee table currently holding 2 strange glasses with tall bodies and narrow rims, as well as a bottle of bubbly. The plush red chairs belonged in a boudoir, accommodating rich ladies in extravagant outfits gossiping over barons and viscounts. The paint did not flake. It smelled clean. She caressed the velvety surface of the upholstery. After seeing so many gilded travesties of wealth, after being disenchanted so many times by the appearance of affluence without substance, it felt both strange and comforting to experience the real deal. She sat heavily and relaxed for the first time in 3 days. Her gaze trailed up to the large room's ceiling where one more surprise awaited her. It was fully decorated with a massive, painted bas-relief that covered it from wall to wall. Once, she had visited a library and found a book on the history of art. It was a treasure trove of illustrations showing the greatest works of the European masters throughout the eras. The first page showed the Sistine Chapel. Kate's first thought had been to question how they could paint something that high, scaffolding she assumed, yet soon her considerations had disappeared. The circular vista mesmerized her with its breathtaking composition. God granting Adam the gift of life gave her vertigo. She could not help but draw a comparison. As her inspections continued, she felt a profound feeling of unease assail her. The men and women displayed were as varied as could be. One showed great strength. Another was a Mediterranean woman with eyes closed, seemingly asleep. Kate's eyes rested on a black man holding a miniature sun, his traits showing a strange exaltation. They were eerie. Something disturbed her on a fundamental level, though she could not quite put her finger on what, until she looked towards the heart. Like a small fish in a whirlpool, her attention was drawn inward to a figure that sent shivers down her spine. It was a massive eye. There were lashes. At least, she hoped those were lashes. The eye was staring down and ignoring her. She felt a wave of insignificance threatening to overwhelm her. She did not matter. She never would. She was just. Kate shook her head to dispel the strange feeling. "Are you all right?" Chris asked. "Yes," she answered, "just a bit overwhelmed, is all." Chris squeezed her hand once again and she felt better. Her nerves were getting to her. It was just her imagination. She would complete the job and get out. Everything would be fine. She just had to keep it together, damn it. Kate ignored the disturbing painting and stared down. The lodges on the lower levels allowed more occupants. She recognized that Frost character with his overly serious granddaughter, who was nervously playing with her white strand of hair when she thought no one was looking. They shared the space with a handful of other mages, most of whom were caught in an animated discussion. She could hear their boisterous laughs. There were other groups, of course, natives in Western clothes burdened by pendants and amulets staring at each other in awkward silence. Blacks turtling in their own lodge as if they expected trouble. People dressed like royalty. Others dressed like soldiers. A ship captain. A trapper. A gypsy woman playing with her golden circlets. This was a strange assembly that not even the rowdy fiction she sometimes enjoyed could describe. Here was a cour de miracles to equal the Parisian one, hidden in a palatial arena at the heart of the American capital of sin. She felt lost. But not for long. Down below, a man walked from behind a curtain to a waiting pulpit. She knew he was a vampire with immediate certainty. There was something there that caught the eye. The man swept the room with his gaze, and it felt as if he stared directly at her. She could see his chestnut eyes with perfect clarity despite the distance. When he talked, his voice tickled her ear with its intimacy. It was warm. It made her feel comfortable and welcome. She felt herself relax a bit more. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Hell's Gates auction. My name is Isaac of the Rosenthal clan, and I shall be your host tonight. It is my pleasure and privilege to welcome you, and I hope that you are all comfortable and at ease. If you are not, you will find a bottle of Mont Black ribbon champagne by your side. I invite you to sample it and try again." A susurrus of soft chuckles and approving words rose through the air. "I am sure that you are all eager to see what we have prepared for you tonight. Without further ado, feast your eyes on our first exhibit." The curtain behind the man flapped open, and two guards pushed forth a heavy cart upon which a shape stood hidden behind a tarp. They removed it to reveal what appeared to be a suit of armor of incredible make. The first item is a Rosenthal specialty, a Sentinel pattern heritage battle golem. The Sentinel is an indefatigable and relentless defender, one that will protect you and your descendants thanks to a blood identification system. Upon the death of the owner, the Sentinel's loyalty construct will follow either the first child or another one of your choosing. The frame and mechanical mind are Rosenthal specialties, while the armor and propulsion systems come straight from the Skarag armories, hidden deep in the bowels of the Norwegian skins. With the Sentinel, you do not just build your assets. You build a legacy. Starting price is £10,000 or equivalent. Kate almost expected the audience to scoff at the ridiculous price. £10,000? She could retire 12 times over with that sum. And yet, the group below was animated by discussions. "Is that thing really worth so much?" she hissed. "I have no idea," Chris replied with clear amusement. She pouted. £10,000 on my left. 10,000. Against all odds, the auction started to take off until it was won by a fat woman in a teal dress that made her look like a pastry. Kate shook her head again. "You fucking bitch!" someone screamed from across the room. The fiery declamation caused a few gasps and outraged whispers. The perpetrator did not appear to care. He was practically hanging over the railing, flailing his fists impotently. His scruffy gray beard made him look like some sort of vagrant, although his fine yellow vest told another story. "You think you can?" It happened very fast. One moment, the man leant forward like a hound on a leash. The next, he was gone, and the door slammed behind him. Kate blinked to remember what had happened. There had been a hand. It had enclosed the screaming man's head like hers would grab an egg. The hand had been attached to a giant. "Oh dear," their host commented genially, "please remember that we will not suffer interruptions. Now, for the next item." And everyone acted as if nothing had happened. "I'm going to be sick," she told Chris. "Not yet," he replied without looking. "Wait a few more items." She wondered what would happen if she strangled him. Probably nothing good. The auction went on without any further disturbance. Some of the auctioned goods required lengthy explanations due to the strangeness. One, for example, was a painting of an eye that would mesmerize anyone staring at it. She was briefly reminded of the ceiling, yet when she looked up again, the feeling was gone. Quite a few groups sent members down to assess the piece of art. The canvas was angled away from the room. The newcomers would invariably take a look, stumble, then just stand there. Even the host's smooth voice proved unequal to the task of keeping her calm after that one. She just wanted out. She closed her eyes to the wands and crowns and exotic weapons. She ignored the strange bookshelves and decrepit grimoires. The scandalous prices streaked through her brain like falling stars, the amounts absurd and fantastic. Each one was high enough to feed entire villages for years. The ransom of a king. After what felt like an eternity, Chris touched her arm and she knew that the time had come. Both of them stood up and rang the bell that would summon Griggs. The smarmy infiltrator took Kate by the arm. She had no need to feign illness on the way down. They dodged under a curtain and reached some sort of infirmary, bypassing the gate to the basement and its group of vigilant guards. A woman gave her a tonic and she gulped it down before she started to channel. Her power was strange and required some time to set up. Its major advantage was that her aura would only fluctuate strangely during the casting, a pattern consistent with the distress she claimed. She heard the telltale noise of the path down unlocking. "I feel better, thank you. We can go now," she announced. The pair of thieves left through the door, and she looked left towards the passage. It was half open, its enchantments disabled. A pair of guards were dragging a cart through. Her vision doubled. A part of her, more distant now, kept walking forward under the guidance of Griggs. That part was solid but also false. It was an empty shell. The real part of her turned and walked confidently through the gaping maw leading down. That part was real. It was also invisible and intangible. She descended a few steps. The shell's gaze fell on a pair of piercing blue eyes. A distant voice rang in her ears. "Is the lady indisposed?" "She is fine now," Griggs answered hurriedly, just bringing her back to her seat. "Ma'am." "I see." The vampire called her and let them pass, but the shell caught one more sight. The woman was scenting the air. A great fright shocked Kate. Her concentration wavered and the ghost gained solidity. Fortunately, there was no one to capitalize on her weakness. The shell remained solid and the vampire left. Kate allowed herself a sigh of relief. The way down was made of stones leading to a corridor well lit by lanterns. The basement was clearly designed to be lived in. Paintings depicting grisly scenes from some heathen mythology adorned the walls. She stumbled. The shell was almost back in their lodge. Every step it took tore something from her chest and replaced it with ice. She leaned against the right door and forced it open. It was blessedly empty. She collapsed on the ground. The shell caught a glimpse of Chris and dissolved into nothing. It was done. She was through, and no one was the wiser. Kate awarded herself 10 seconds of reprieve before starting her search. The room she found herself in was half living quarter and half workshop. Piles of clothes waited to be ironed, a few more awaited mending. In a corner of the room, a table displayed a chessboard and a pile of books. She took a minute to catch her breath and dispel the awful feeling that her torso was about to cave in. She had become better at it, but the spell was so harrowing that every cast left her feeling gouged out. She found the key and uniform where Griggs left them, snuck behind a patrol, and made her way to the emergency exit. Her target was more a cistern than anything else. It was bare, save for a massive central pool. The entire far wall was occupied by a grate with a massive, fortified gate set squarely in the middle. It shone with arcane symbols of defense, alarm and solidity. Steel bars blocked a small window, allowing her to see beyond, not unlike a prison door. The key clicked in place. She opened the way in silence, the titanic slab of metal rotating on perfectly oiled hinges. She had almost expected some metallic shriek that would alert the entire building. On the other side, she saw a canal with an overflow to allow the water to leave. It was tragically devoid of Catholic priests. Or any other allies for that matter. She stood there and prayed. A minute later, a pair of footsteps emerged from the gloomy darkness and sent her heart aflutter. Her partners emerged a few moments later. "Well done," Chris said, "now we wait for the heart." Even McCormick grudgingly greeted her as he checked his many weapons. He was armed to the teeth. Things were looking up. Griggs sighed to prevent himself from whistling. He clenched his fist to avoid snapping his fingers, or taking his deck out to flick cards. Control, control, control. Frustrating. All those rules and norms and whatnot everyone had to follow. They were just games of shadows, pointless and restrictive. He stopped on the threshold to one of the lodges and knocked. The door was opened by a mage in a ridiculous white coat, who blinked when he recognized another practitioner. Fortunately, Griggs had long ago understood that a subdued aura was an inoffensive one, and the guest asked another bottle of booze before slamming the door in his face. Griggs smirked, turned around and almost walked into the vampire. It was the woman. Lucky him. "Say, the woman you escorted down has mysteriously disappeared. You would not happen to know anything about that, would you?" she asked with a soft smile. Griggs returned it. They should have sent the muscle. He had a way with the fairer sex. He met her gaze and submitted her to the full power of his hypnosis. He saw the surprise in her pallid face, he saw her eyes flutter and felt a strong resistance. Then he was through. He heard a noise like moving branches, then he appeared in her mindscape. It was there that he was king. In the real world, the world of flesh, he was one amongst many. Here, the fabric of the mind moved under his fingers like clay under the care of a virtuoso, creating wonders and destroying much too. All that it took was to find whichever item in the woman's core, most of the time a bedroom, represented her ego. After that, he could tweak and twist to his heart's content. Griggs inspected his surroundings and his good mood evaporated. What the hell was going on? He should be inside of a house, or a room. Instead, he was at the edge of a bizarre maze of bark and stone. Alleys stopped without reason while strange statues dotted the Boschian landscape representing men, but also strange wolf-like creatures and other chimeras. A fortress rose from the earth at some distance, white of walls, with sharp towers jutting like spines. The light of the moon was purple. Something told him that it would be a bad idea to look up. That was the mindscape of a vampire. Original. Yet, as always, insufficient. He focused and his form elongated. His hands turned into twin claws ending in long, crimson spikes. It was time to explore this unusual playground, and find something new to play with. Griggs took one step forward and hissed in pain. A thorny root had sneakily fastened around his ankle. He severed the guilty appendage and walked with renewed purpose. There had to be a way to the fortress. The first seemingly empty alley was hiding a passage, a way to the left hidden behind a sort of optical illusion with the wall of vegetation bulging slightly outward. He snickered and turned around. A branch whacked his chest. Griggs swore. His powerful claw savaged the guilty piece of vegetation, as well as the wall behind it. Leaves and twigs rained before his fury. He suddenly felt quite silly. Those were just obstacles, probably some sort of passive defense mechanism against intrusion that only vampires had. Alva's defenses had been about camouflage and misdirection. This mind was probably trained differently. He realized that he should be grateful the blonde woman offered a challenge. It would not do to grow bored and jaded. Enough self-reflection, it was time to move on. Griggs took a step forward and gasped in pain. Another root had grabbed his foot. He freed himself, but not without damage. The horrid branch had blood and fabric stuck to its awful spines by the time he was done. This was getting tiring. Have to keep moving, he grumbled to himself. The hidden path led through another maze, under arcs and by pools filled with thick scarlet liquid. He tried to stop to close his wounds but found the scraps reticent to his ability to shift. It was as if the thorns had marked him. He also noticed it now. Every time he stopped, roots would quest towards his feet. Finally, he emerged on a circular plaza of white stone. One of the statues occupied the middle, a wolfish thing caught mid-howl. Finally, he grumbled. Sitting on the marble-like floor, he focused on the cuts spotting his legs with red dots, in vain. The wounds resisted his effort to close them. Fucking weird spa, Griggs received no warning. The statue's heavy claws smashed into his flanks and sent him rolling against the bramble. His only saving grace came from his own claws blocking the worst of the damage. The pain still forced a cry out of his lungs. He scrambled out of the way and dodged the roots snaking towards him. The statue stepped back. "You piece of shit!" he yelled. Griggs lunged forward and raked the statue's chest, easily crouching under its counterattack. He stepped back once again. This had to be some sort of guardian. The statue retreated once more. "You cannot get out of the stone circle, can you?" he asked with a dreadful smile. The construct did not answer. Griggs carefully and patiently started to dismantle his foe. He would step in, strike one blow then dance out. He would keep moving to avoid getting trapped. His patient and cold joy turned to frustration. "Why won't you die?" He tracked the groove his first attack had dug in the statue's torso and realized, to his dismay, that it was closing. For the first time in years, Griggs felt something more than frustration. He could not even leave. The moment he broke the link with the vampire, She would kill him. He had taken McCormick's warning to heart. He did not stand a chance. I must press on, he raged between gritted teeth. He had broken 100 minds. Experience was on his side. He would crack this nut as he had cracked so many others. Griggs rushed through the circle and nimbly jumped over a swipe. The second one nicked his back, then he was through. He sprinted through another opening. Damn it. His circumstances were growing more dire by the minute. The questing routes were quicker to find him now. He managed to dodge under traps a few more times, but he could feel the maze closing in around him like the jaw of some impossible creature. And still, he dared not look up. There, light. He crashed into a large clearing, tired and hurt. The fortress doors loomed before him on the other side of a garden of statues. His blood ran cold. A female soldier in stylized medieval plate held a sword in a fence guard, a fox mask hiding her features. A man in a leather suit, hands resting on the hilts of his two pistols. A titan in black iron armor gripped a massive double-headed axe. An Amazon with a spear lounged on her pedestal as if it were a couch. Other unmoving pieces of art stood, kneeled, and sat between pillars of engraved onyx and amphoras bearing strange white flowers. The last guardian dominated the rest, and its alien appearance froze Griggs' heart. It had a flat face, cruel blue eyes shining an otherworldly blue. Its smooth torso possessed a chitinous quality that the otherwise human traits made even more jarring. Griggs had to get through at any cost. He had to hope that the gates were unlocked. It was his only hope. But wait. There were spots there that did not have stones. Perhaps the range of each statue was extremely limited. He had to chance it. He sprinted forward with the strength of despair, relying on his longer limbs to move with unexpected swiftness. He rolled under the Titan's axe swing, he pushed on his feet and jumped forward. The Titan pursued him. The Titan stepped outside of its stone circle, signaling his demise. A sword caught him in the shoulder and pinned him to the ground like an insect. He raised his claws to break it, to escape. A gunshot. His left hand exploded in a shower of blood and bones. He screamed his heart out. The pain tore through his psyche and flayed his vessel. His body returned to normal. He awaited a coup de grace that did not come. The constructs took a step back while thorny branches captured his limbs. The strange vegetation hoisted him up and smashed him against a nearby wall. The rupee root around his throat threatened to crush his neck. Around him, the statues stood in a semicircle, weapons pointed at him. The vampire was sitting daintily on the shoulder of the last guardian in a vaporous dress of midnight blue. Her feet swung in the air. She held one of the white flowers between two nails of polished obsidian. You know, I have a theory about those who assume a monstrous form in their mind palaces. What the fuck are you? My theory is that they are significantly less human on the inside than they appear to be. In any case, we have a busy night ahead of us, so I will be brief. Where is the woman? Griggs tried to break the connection, tried to fight, but he realized that he was completely overpowered. It was time to negotiate then. How about, he screamed when something sharp stabbed the back of his skull. He felt himself unravel. I forgot to mention, your consent is not required. You are probably familiar with the concept. This isn't what you said. Kate hissed. One of the guards lay dead on the ground in an expanding pool of blood. He had managed to block Chris Cudgel's hit to the head, but not McCormick's follow-up. The other one had crumbled insensate on the ground. Her lover looked pale but resolute. Later, Kate. We need to leave first. We can hide the bodies but not the blood. We have to go. McCormick seemed to agree as he grabbed the heart of the Nile in a gloved hand. The jewel was as large as a quail egg and sapphire blue. He tossed it to Chris, who deftly caught it. It seemed to Kate as if it had gained a red tint. You killed him. They're enemies of mankind, girl, you waste your sympathy. Pa, I knew that it was a mistake to bring a woman, McCormick spat. Enough of this, let's go. Chris urged, but too late. From the entrance to the basement came the noise of stumbling footsteps and a terrible whine. The female vampire, Ariane, Kate remembered, strolled in with a man in tow. She dragged him behind her like one drags a rowdy child. It took her a moment to recognize Griggs. The man she had known and feared was gone. Only a shadow of its former self stood there, gibbering like a madman, eyes wide and bloodshot, foamy spit bordering a mouth frozen in a rictus. He was emitting a keening sound, like a boiling pot of tea. She did not know if it stemmed from madness, or the talon stabbed deeply into his clavicle. The vampire stopped a few steps away to examine the scene with polite interest. Her gaze swept the guilty trio, the gem in their possession and the dead man at their feet. The detached, almost amused expression bothered Kate even more than the blood slowly staining her ally's shirt. "Not a meal then, a buffet," she commented. They finally moved. Kate rushed into the cistern with Chris close behind. A blue light emerged from behind her, where McCormick stood still. "In nomine Patris, et Filii," the priest intoned. "Jarn," the vampire answered. Magic devastated the hallway. Kate had tasted power as she stood behind the old man at the entrance. She had not experienced it. The spell roaring behind her spoke of peeled skin and steel knives scraping bone. It stung her gums. It grated the nerves behind her eyes. She lost her balance even as her legs pumped up and down to propel her through the emergency exit faster than she had even run in her entire life. Shield. She knew that it would not be enough. McCormick's shriek turned into a gurgle as she crashed on the ground. The blue light dimmed. Chris slammed the door and turned the lock. The vampire was suddenly there. The couple jumped back and Kate raised an arm reflexively, expecting a violent end, yet, nothing happened. The lack of any further violence was almost anticlimactic. Chris was the first to stand back up and approach the door. She could not get through, Kate realized. The wards and steel had kept the monster at bay. They were saved. But no, she could have alerted others. Soldiers could be coming around to block all egress. They had to hurry, except she recognized something in Chris' eyes now, something that almost never occurred. He was angry. And anger made him stupid. It made him stubborn and defensive. She could only guess the cause too easily. He had considered Griggs a friend despite his many flaws. Chris lifted the jewel and practically dangled it under the creature's nose. Even through the steel bars, she could tell that his provocation had not worked. The vampire showed the same polite interest as before, as if the murder of a man and the enslavement of another were but a pleasant diversion from her evening work. "How does it feel to be outsmarted and beaten by a mortal?" her lover asked. He sounded bitter and furious. Kate placed a hand on his arm to drag him away. The creature was wasting their time. It was a trap. "Chris, how does it feel to lose?" he demanded again. The monster tilted her head as her smile broadened. When she spoke, her voice was conversational. "Truth be told, I lose rather often." Kate pulled on Chris' shoulder towards the end of the tunnel. She could almost hear the sounds of the night, smell the spice and stench of the city. "Yet, in the end, I always come out on top." Kate's heart stops in her chest. There was a click. There was a ting of metal touching metal. She turned to see the entire barrel of McCormick's looted pistol slide between the metal bars. The vampire shot Chris. The explosion reverberated in the enclosed space in a deafening crack that left her ears ringing, her nose itchy with the pungent odor of spent powder. Her lover stumbled back and fell onto one knee. His hands reached to his chest where bloomed the crimson petals of a strange flower, expanding from a core of tarnished black. You. Kate screamed, then cut herself short a second later. She grabbed Chris under the shoulder and hoisted him up before he could finish his collapse. She took one difficult step forward, then another. They were going out. They were leaving this place for good. Chris' breaths came in gasps and pants. She forced herself to ignore the location of the wound. It could be fine. Such gunshots could be survived, if one was lucky, and Chris had enough luck for 10 people. She pushed the dread away. They exited the tunnel into an abandoned garden at the back of some decrepit manor. Moreau's carriage was right ahead. He saw them and stepped down, helped her get a failing Chris inside. They were moving by the time she had torn the fabric of her beautiful dress to apply pressure to the wound. It was not working. The improvised bandage was already soaking wet with no signs of improvement. Come on, Just apply pressure and the bleeding would stop. Elementary medicine. Practically everyone knew that. She just had to keep doing it. The carriage bumped and Chris moaned in pain. He grabbed her hand so she held onto it. The skin was slimy with half-coagulated liquid. She felt something as well. Take. He rasped. Yes, I'm holding it. I'm holding your hand. Just hold on. It went limp. It fell from her grasp. There was something left there, a mineral node that used to be blue but was now covered in scarlet fingerprints. Chris? He was very pale. Kate went through grief and anger at the absurdity of it all and came out the other way, heart-numb, brain frozen in a haze of stupidity. She could barely think. She had a jewel. She had a corpse. She was in a carriage vibrating like an earthquake. The information passed through her mind like through a sieve. She retained nothing. Something bumped on top of her. She heard a brief scream, quickly interrupted. The ceiling above her was ripped off like a page from a book. Each nail gave up one after another in the rhythmic clack clack clack. A half smile. Half-lidded blue eyes. Why? The thief whispered. Why what? The stranger answered, ignoring the entire absurd world. Then she was gone. There was a terrible crash, a feeling of weightlessness. Cold waters tore a gasp from her chest and she would have drowned here and there if the carriage frame had not kept the air in. Kate was so far beyond any reasonable thought that her instincts kicked in without conscious effort. She saw herself as if from the outside. The bereaved woman pushed herself from the wreck. She struggled with the weight of her soaked garment, the accursed thing trying to drag her to the depths. She beat a little dance with her feet until the blessed lights came close enough and her head broke through the surface of Lake Pontchartrain's turbid waters. She gulped its fetid air. She blessed her aunt for teaching her how to swim and stay afloat, despite the weight of her clothes. She fought on. She heard heavy footsteps coming from the side. Someone pulled her up and she realized that the water was no longer so deep. She pushed the brown hair plaster to her forehead until she could see the brown murk around her and the green shore ahead. A man had helped her, was still helping her get out. She had clung to the hard, somehow. They stopped. They were on a swampy piece of land at the edge of a gathering of shocks. A handful of torches provided illumination for a rickety wooden bridge nearby and the carriage that had smashed through its railing. Of the vampire, there was no sign. The man was familiar to her. She recognized the mustache and the righteous air. He and the vampire had welcomed her at the entrance after he apparently saved 3 thugs from whatever had happened to her team. She understood the implication only too easily, and found that she did not care. There was not enough left of Kate inside of Kate to care about Kate. Reality had lost its value, her own life included. Should have left me under the water, she said, wouldn't be worse than what your precious monster has in store for me. You begrudge me saving you? He answered with a gruff voice. He had this white knight, valorous defender of the meek aura that pissed her off. Yes, I begrudge. I begrudge mightily. Begrudge, 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 you pompous ass. Why are you here? Why do you serve this beast? Do you not see what she has done? That she is an enemy? Her voice started small but grew crescendo as the bottled ocean of feelings inside of her found a leak in her armor. Anger bubbled in her chest, aimed at everything and everyone. The man was unmoved by her anger, contrary to her expectations. He did not even exhibit a trace of guilt. I have seen what she has done for much longer than you have. She's a monster. I know, and I think I finally understand. You think that I should help you because you are human, and she is not. Correct? Yes. Was it not obvious? Let me get that straight. You, a burglar guilty of breaking and entering, grand theft, and accessory to murder, want me to help you? It does not matter. She bellowed, they are not people. And the serial rapist in your team destroyed Miss Alva's mind because she deserved it. You are fine with that? This level of violation? This all right to you? He continued, his voice gaining in intensity. It was stronger now and burned with a conviction that he had not shown earlier when holding the monster back. You speak of mankind. Ha! What a convenient and fleeting thing it is for you lot, Your allies loot, kill, and rape, and that's fine because they, whoever they are, deserve it. Kidnapping's for the greater good. Sacrificing people for the betterment of that vague thing you call mankind. Horseshit. What the hell was he talking about? I understand now. You only plaster those values on the people you're wrong so that it's fine to treat them like garbage. You think yourself better than the monster you denounce? Hypocrites. She and I have done more for actual people of flesh and blood in the last month than you have in your entire life, you shameless tart. How people act is more important than what people are, and you're a self-centered thief with no care for the victims your gang of thugs left in their trail. I am done. You can go back to your imaginary mankind. I want no part of it. I will do good in my own way. It took 2 seconds for the most important part of the answer to register. You're letting me go? I cannot morally justify holding you. Kate scowled at the tall man with obvious distrust, but she also knew that his type sometimes let women go, so happy they were with their little self-righteous moment. She also knew better than to stay. The pair glared at each other, both entrenched in their ethics as in the fortress. She trotted as fast as her exhausted legs could carry her and disappeared behind the corner of a dilapidated house. Silence, such as it was, descended upon the scene. You might as well come out, the man finally said after coming down a bit. Shadows dissipated by the road. Ariane stepped forward. You did not tell her, she said. No, I did not, the man agreed between his teeth. She waited. She is merely reaping the consequence of her own action, bringing a fake jewel to a cutthroat cabal. I am done wasting my time on those who are not worth the effort. I have made my choice. I will stay and steer you in the right direction. God knows you need the guidance. He did not see the vampire roll her eyes. So, is that fine with you? Do we need some sort of ceremony? He asked with much less bluster. You need to give me your blood to conclude the pact. All of my kin will know that you are not to be touched. We can do that back at the auction hall. Just my blood, right, not my soul. For the last time, no. The tall man grumbled under his mustache as he made his way up the road into his horse. Ariane stayed. She took one look towards the city, where the thief had fled, then another at the back of her newest minion. 2 birds with 1 stone. What was that? Nothing. Chapter 111. I approach most of my problems with the same tried-and-true methodology. The first step is to identify the cause, the second step is to remove the cause with extreme prejudice. So far, I could not seem to apply it to my current issue, taking Richard out of the Mexican-American War. Indeed, the continuation of hostilities is not due to a sudden revival of Mexico's scattered armed forces, but the very reason why their armed forces are scattered to begin with, they do not have a unified, functional government to agree on terms of surrender. I am stuck in the South, away from my power base. The first 3 months of 1847 are spent on several projects. Most of my time is dedicated to spying and keeping an eye on the ever-changing tides of war, and solidifying my alliance with the growing Natalist clan. Many a white cabal agent finds employment among their magic-deprived ranks, thanks to my work as an intermediary. I also back Meluson's many financial projects, including the completion of a canal and the first railroad in Chicago. I foresee that Meluson's seat of power will eclipse Marquette in barely a few years, and I do not mind too much. First, I have an interest in many of her endeavors, and second, she cannot match the level of control, and thus safety, that I have over my land. The rest of the time is spent getting my behind kicked by Lord Jarek in sparring duels. That man is a monster. Even my most powerful spells barely make him flinch. I have yet to force him to use his Magna Arca, and I have rebuilt my ribcage more times than I care to count. Besides training sessions, I also bring Sheridan up to speed on vampire customs and diplomacy. It takes an unreasonable amount of time, including exposure to my latest rendition of The Watcher, but he is finally convinced that we are not, in fact, hellspawns. No. Those are clearly the werewolves. Nothing I can say convince him that unholy crosses between man and beast can be anything but the work of the devil. All in all, I had fun. Then, in April, I finally get my chance when Richard is wounded at the Battle of Cerro Gordo, in the Mexican heartlands. The medical magi handily keep around makes sure that his arm does not get infected, but the wound is still quite serious and would require a long convalescence. Richard and I have a bit of a falling out when he realizes how many lives medical mages could save and how I let some of his men die in vain. My answer is that I simply do not care about them. Sheridan's answer is to remind the young man of the treatment of sorcery in an aggressively Protestant army in a combat situation. Sheridan's answer wins the argument. I convince Richard to come home to rest and then, since the hostilities are petering out like a moist firecracker anyway, to accept the recommendation he received to enter West Point. The war is over for him. We board a Nautilus ship from Veracruz back to New Orleans and then home. Our little group arrives at my family compound a bit after sunset. June welcomes us on the stairs before the entrance. Her tired eyes light up when she sees her uncle, his arm still in a sling, but otherwise safe and sound. Richard, bienvenue chez toi, she welcomes him in French. I am glad to see you, comment vas-tu? The pair catches up before June sends him inside for a late dinner. She turns to me with a sheer expression of relief. Hello Ariane, and gentlemen, she greets. Sheridan and John politely remove their hats and I make the introduction. To her credit, she does not appear intimidated by John's presence even after I revealed his true nature. I credit John himself for his performance. He developed a way to slouch that makes him appear as a sort of embarrassed, clumsy boulder. The disguise grants him a deceptive gentle giant aura that the fair sex often finds comforting. June and I send the man inside and I take her for a short stroll around the property. You have such a nice dress, she compliments nervously. I am wearing a new iteration of the classic semi-battle apparel with reinforcements around the chest area, as well as vambraces. This one is violet with blue undertones. Thanks. It has pockets, I tell her with a little bit of pride. I prove their existence by removing a knife from a recess near my waist. Wow, how did you manage that? I threatened the tailor's family. No, I mean, never mind. So thank you for bringing him back. You are welcome. I merely fulfilled my obligations to my brother. Right. We had a funeral. It was calm and sober. Serene. He would have liked it, I think. She seeks my approval. No, comfort. Sheridan's presence has a peculiar effect on my psyche. Beyond his ability to advise me, I feel that I care slightly more about things I had discarded before, such as other people's feelings. Without realizing it, I had let my nature erode my interest in useless pursuits. Tauran's departure had not helped either. He always knew when to drag me away from the pursuit of power and influence in favor of the art of carpe diem. With him gone, I have pursued my projects with relentless focus. Nirari's presence reminded me of the endgame, but perhaps I should remember to unwind, from time to time. I should paint the drawings I made. And invite Isaac out while he is here. I am sure he did. I comfort June with a soft smile. My brother cared deeply about you. You were his pride. He told me so while I was there. She blushes. He did. Achille mellowed out in his later years. You would not have recognized him if you had met him earlier. Despite his best efforts, he remained someone who was very private with his own emotions. Deep inside he saw himself as a stable rock upon which the family could be built, like our father was for us. I see. So that's why. She finishes. She tilts her head downward with the absent air of someone lost in their own thoughts. What troubles you, child? I ask. You asking me while looking so young? I consider leaving the hasting essence unused and decide against it. I am not here to impress a mortal. I am here to spend time with my family, my mortal roots. Par games mean nothing and gain me nothing. Yes. My dad sued me. I beg your pardon. I exclaim, outraged. My anger finds echo in her, and outrage soon replaces shame on her lovely traits. Our lawyer read grandpa's will. My dad wanted the house to clear his gambling debts, but Grandpa only left him a single letter that literally just said, "You were my life's greatest disappointment, So now he claims that I poison his mind. That little guy. I forgot that every family is their black sheep. My own father. June continues, her eyes brimming with tears. I grab her and pull her into my embrace. She immediately cries and I somewhat awkwardly pat the back of her head. Her hair smells of sunshine. Do not worry, June. I will take care of this for you. Oh. I did not mean to. I know, you do not want to bother me. I will not come back often, but I will promise you this, you can keep living your life as you see fit, and I will be the invisible hand that turns aside fate's worst blows. You are a good person, June. I hereby choose you as my contact for the family. I grant you leave to reach out to me in times of need, though do not forget that I will not protect you from the consequences of your own actions. June nods emphatically, then stops, considering. She has learned not to trust a free meal. What do you ask in exchange? She asks. Nothing more than what you already do. Think of me as a reclusive, rich, powerful, grumpy aunt that still wants to stay in touch with the family. She laughs this time, her joy dispelling her earlier dismay. I find that it pleases me. I can do that. April 1847, Savannah. My destination is quite a sight. Made of white stone, but not marble, the Rosenthal Consortium regional headquarters manages to appear wealthy without standing out too much. Careful engravings attract the eye, while barred windows and a monumental steel gate give off the vague impression that it would be unwise to show up without pressing business. I am rather sure that no spells are involved. The construction was just designed to be intimidating from the ground up. I am quickly let in by very polite attendees and leave John to loom over a pair of clerks. Come in, Isaac says as I knock on his door. I do so, and take in the sights. My friend chose well. His office overlooks the Savannah River and its many ships, offering a breathtaking view even at night. The desk offers the same understated elegance and anal retentive obsession with order and cleanliness I have come to associate with him. Salim, at least, does not use a color code to differentiate three different types of litigations. I will admit that Isaac looks gorgeous, even when slumming it. His dark hair is only a bit scruffy, and his impeccable suit gives him a young sign of a ruling family aura that fits his composure perfectly. The vampire himself sits on a dignified leather chair, head held between his hands. A single gaslight illuminates his work plan and the small pile of missives lying there. Hello, Isaac. Trouble? I ask as I shuffle in. He offers me a seat with a casual gesture before flipping a letter to the side. Oh, Ariane, please do not mind my somber mood. I am delighted to see you. Delighted. Just troublesome matters, such as revolutions in France, Germany, and Sweden. Hungary too. And a small book published earlier in London that has sent our seers in a frenzy, he complains. A book? I ask with a raised brow. He throws me a copy of the offending material and I inspect the cover. The Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Whatever, I scoff, and toss it back to him. Should you not be pleased since you are here anyway? No, for the same reason that your house being on fire does not become good news if it happens while you are on a trip, he deadpans, and I feel a bit stupid. Isaac is a competent manager. Of course, he will be made to solve issues upon his return, and delay will only compound the difficulties. Sorry about that. You can always desert and join us, you know? He glares. Have you perhaps met Sophie? He finally asks. I am a bit surprised by the non sequitur. Sophie? Constantine's secretary. That would be Lord Constantine, Ariane. Be careful, for lords take offense easily. And yes, I am referring to her. So? She is, persistent in her pursuit. The revelation strikes me dumb for a moment. You would not consider switching sides because Sophie lusts after your scrumptious self and her attention scares you? I never expected the fun I could get from seeing the placid vampire squirm. Not exactly scare. And there are other factors, of course. I enjoy my current position and all the knowledge I derive from it. Excuses, excuses. You need but to suffer the romantic attention of a Rosenthal once to understand what I mean, he replies, unamused. Oh. Are you volunteering? I tease. I do not love you as our kind sometimes does. I do find you fascinating, witty, brilliant, and dangerously attractive. You are correct, Isaac. I had not suffered Rosenthal attention before. I give you a passing grade. Isaac seems at loss for words. As my first courting present, I am proud to offer this to you, I announce. I grab the wrap painting by my side and present it to him. Hold on, that is not. Should I not be the one who? Did you paint this yourself? Of course. May I? By all means. Isaac reveals his gift with meticulous patience, cutting every string until he can unfold the paper. I drew a portrait of him as seen from above, taken as he was extolling the properties of his treasures back at the auction. I believe I managed to capture his congenial persona except for the eyes. They glance upward with a certain shine that shows the sharp mind underneath. They seem to search the spectator's soul to uncover plots and duplicities. This is the mask of a man over the brain of a god. A true Rosenthal vampire. I think he likes it. He does not speak for a full 2 minutes. His inspection is so very thorough, I think that he would remember every pigment and every stroke. Finally, he returns his attention to me, expression inscrutable. I accept your courting present and hope that the subsequent sex will not get in the way of our friendship. Wow, that was unexpectedly fast. And both Imena and Nami did mention that vampires frequently engaged in casual sex with those they trusted. And it has been a while. And I am curious. And, perhaps, a little bit lonely. And I trust Isaac on a deep level. He was the first to help me understand our society. And he looks really good in that suit. I think I want to try that. I push on before I can overthink the situation. That will depend on your performance, Isaac. I will hold you to that. And off we go, with the master of the place taking the initiative with an enthusiasm I would never have imagined from someone who was hesitating to hunt a prey. It turns out that the Rosenthal Consortium's second floor contains a secured bedroom. I just go with the flow and admit that Isaac is an experienced partner. We do not love each other, but I manage to ignore the nagging remnants of mortal guilt that would otherwise ruin the experience to just let go and enjoy myself. And so I do, for a good hour. I hesitate to ask, but did you end your relationship with Tauron? He asks, as we rest under the covers after the act. A bit late, no? I retort, amused, but he shakes his head. Relationships between vampires follow different codes. Since marriages and families do not cement our unions, we make arrangements however we see fit. You could have ended your relationship, or opened it while you were separated. I see. To answer your question, we are free to pursue companionship with the understanding that we will claim each other next time we meet. He nods in understanding. A wise agreement between lovers who hold each other dear. We relax in bed for a while longer and Isaac proves that he can put his memory to good use. He had clearly been paying attention to what I like. We have more fun and I take a pleasant bath afterward to give myself some time to recover, and also because my hair looks like tumbleweed. Alas, all pleasant times must come to an end. We eventually return to his office, where he shows a table containing a map, the official reason for my visit. We have made progress in translating the path to the Dragon Claw. Alleged Dragon Claw. Have some faith, Ariane, you never know what might be listening. I know what is watching and it does not care. Bah. The map, Isaac. Yes. We called upon the minds of the prominent expert in the Sea Peoples, a Professor Ferguson, from Oxford. He and his assistant deciphered the text with incredible speed, and we have narrowed the starting base to an island south of Kos, in the Carpathian Sea. That is great news. Not so much, because the island does not officially exist, he answers, pointing at a small expanse of blue in the heart of the Mediterranean. I recognize Crete to the south, where the Minotaur was said to have his labyrinth, and Rhodes with its lost colossus to the east, though, arguably, I had no notion of where that island was before looking at the map. Could they be mistaken? Indeed not. The navigation records are quite clear, especially the traveling distances and times recorded in the recovered parchments. There are a few possibilities that we have to account for. The island was submerged? Possible, but unlikely. We have no records of any era with catastrophe consistent with an entire island disappearing beneath the waves. My guess, and our progenitor agrees, is that the sea peoples managed to hide it with magical means. What, an entire island? Anticipating my protests, Isaac lifts his hands in a calming gesture. Let me explain before you object. The place we are looking for is a sacred location. It was used as a rallying point for the fleets to conduct ritual ceremonies before they launched expeditions on whichever shore was unlucky enough to attract their gaze. It was not large. No more than 5 kilometers of diameter. I remain unconvinced. 5 kilometers is a lot to camouflage. There could be something on the island that makes it special, something that would incite a confederation of raiders to choose it as their most sacred spot, despite worshipping different gods. Something that would draw a dragon in. Perhaps. Your hypothesis raises the question, if it remained hidden for so long, how are we to find it? I am glad you asked. We have designed a powerful tracking spell that only someone with an immense amount of aura and a good knowledge of blood magic can possess. Did you know? It will be set in a stela and dropped in the main cabin of a ship sailing soon to Gibraltar. How soon does it depart? Whenever you are ready. You may bring your vassal, but I will ask that you keep Do here, on account of the amount of blood he requires as a fledgling as well as other diplomatic issues. I understand. After you have arrived, you will transfer to the Corbeau, one of our exploration ships. Professor Ferguson and his assistant will already be on board, along with a team of researchers and helpers. Key members of the expedition will be made aware of your nature. You will have the power to stir them as you see fit, though we advise you to let them do their job. Of course, they are qualified, after all. Do you agree? Yes. I will take part in this expedition. Hopefully, it pans out and we get a nice weapon out of it. Even if it does not, perhaps you can use this opportunity to tour Europe. I am sure that Loth and Tauran would be delighted to see you again. You can take a month or two. That does sound tempting. A pleasant trip followed by a holiday tour. The only way that this could go poorly would be if the captain was named Bingle, ha ha. Bingle? Isaac answers with a frown. And there it is. My heart freezes in my chest, even more than usual, a great feeling of dread assails my mind. Please no. As in Miranda Bingle? Professor Ferguson's assistant? Indeed. I calmly place my hands on the table. I calmly grip it until the wood groans, then, I calmly smash it against the wall. The Atlantic, 2 weeks later. I'm bored. A bang on my large cabin's door. Not that bored. Go away, Sheridan. The Corbeau's executive cabin is vast and luxurious even to the exacting standards of vampire nobility. It contains a bedroom, a bathroom, and a receiving room of great size, richly decorated by furniture that can be locked in place in case of bad weather. Polished wood and lush rugs cover the walls in warm colors, giving guests a feeling of cozy intimacy. The armory I brought with me only makes the place more interesting. At least, to me. The best feature is the throne-like chair on which I am currently sitting. I turn to my domain's temporary occupant. My cabin occupies the back of the ship, and it includes a large rectangular hatch to the outside. My sarcophagus rests on rails aiming into it with an addition stuck around for the duration of the trip. Should the vessel ever be compromised, either I or Sheridan can launch it and I will safely rest under the waves until nightfall when ballasts will lift the heavy piece to the surface of the water. The purpose of the system is to render any attack on the ship for the purpose of killing me pointless. Said hatch also serves as an ingress point for the world's strangest castaway. A bother, don't you think so, Siren dear? The fishwoman replies with a throaty sound, her malevolent yellow eye fixed on the door. She has scars on her greenish tail, across her pale white chest, on one cheek going backwards, and she is missing parts of her fins and 2 webbed fingers. She looks like she was on the unpleasant end of a canister shot. Her nose is absent, replaced by twin vertical slits, but that was from birth, so it does not technically count. Her only notable belonging besides her bag is a strange wristband of pink stone, the material encircling a purple gem as if it had been weaved around it. For all I know, it was. She showed up 2 days into the trip, flopping on the wooden board after banging on the hatch. I did not have the heart to chase her. I was already languid with ennui. "Ariane, we need to talk." A voice yells from behind the door. I grumble since I could imagine why he wants a discussion. Simply, I have 15 hours per day of activity. I have been reading, I have been casting, I have been practicing forms of spear and sword. I have written 2 essays on the inevitability of our appearance to the mundane world, which I will send to Lord Constantine when we make landfall in Gibraltar. I have written 3 odes and 17 dirty limericks, with Melusine only starring in 3. I have tried knitting and realized I disliked it. I have filled one of my books with various drawings taken from my memories. I even found out a way to enchant the barrel of my next rifle. It has not saved me. So, the Watcher forbid me, I have started playing pranks on the crew. I could not help it. Ghostly apparitions in the window? Done. Strange noises on the hull as people try to sleep? Done. Items that mysteriously disappear then reappear when no one is looking? Absolutely. Perhaps enchanting a piece of wet cloth to slap the butt of the next person visiting the lavatory was a bit too much. The scream woke up the captain. Rather than facing me directly, as the man was smart enough to know where the disruptions were coming from, our brave skipper asked an equally bored Sheridan to intercede with me and limit my shenanigans. The gall of this man, trying to make me responsible. I am older, therefore, mathematically more mature. "Ariane, this is serious. There are pirates." Do my ears deceive me? Pirates? Yes. Pirates. Oh. YESSSSSSS. Pirates. Finally. Finally. Miranda Bloody Bingle came through. I thought her undaunted catastrophe would only activate upon our meeting, but no. Lo and behold, some action. We are letting them board us without resistance since it's almost night. Can we rely on you to solve the problem? Of course you can. Do send them my way. Boarding action. It has been, what, 10 years since the last one? How exciting. I wish I could have been on the main deck. I quickly move my throne to face the door. I also grab a coffee table and place it to the side to hold my 2 revolvers. Finally, I change into full battle regalia, Loth's armor, the obsidian gauntlet, the knives, the spear which I leave to the side. I apply a small enchantment to the lone lantern to give the light a blue hue, then I settle to wait. Siren comes to stand by my side and hides her presence. I find the fishwoman curious. I am still unsure as to why she is sticking to me. It cannot be the food, since she barely touched the salted cod I asked for her, preferring to rely on her own supply of multicolored algae and strangely preserved flesh she drags from her scale bag. Our conversations are often one-sided. She barely speaks more than 5 words per day, and all her sentences start with Nirari. The most curious aspect of our unexpected partnership might be my reaction to her presence. She is a predator. I am a predator. So far, I have always felt strongly about those who would intrude upon my territory. Siren is still an unknown, and yet her presence does not bother me in the slightest, as if we were complementary instead of competitive. I dismiss the thought. Heavy footsteps announce the coming of quite a few guests. A discreet bang on the door. "Come in," I offer, and Sheridan walks in first, hands in the air. That immediately ticks me off. The man who follows has a long brown beard and the sort of clothes designed to look like a Navy officer's uniform without being one. He stops when he spots me, and his mouth hangs open to reveal blackened teeth. The lout currently holds Sheridan's Colt, muzzle pointed at my vessel's back. That will not do at all. More men follow. They look like unkempt sailors. Many show dubious hygiene and faces turned scarlet by alcohol abuse. The smell of my space downgrades from that of a salon to that of a barrack. I scrunch my nose in displeasure. A good dozen men spread in a half-circle around me, all gaping like a bunch of fools and fouling the air with their fetid breath. My mood plummets. Ah, well. Let us make use of this diversion, at least. Poor as Day Malkin. With a massive clang, the metal door seals behind my guests. They all jump at the same time, and Sheridan uses the opportunity to withdraw to a darker corner of the room. I can feel his fury from here, a rare occurrence. It must chafe his manly pride to allow criminals on board. He is more of a to the last drop of blood kind of lad. I admire that he would place the safety of the sailors above his pride. Tick tick tick. My nails play a little tune on the throne's lacquered arm. Progressively, the sorry rabble of imbeciles populating my private quarters returns their attention to me. I was told that you had demands? I ask, amused. A smile reveals a hint of fangs, not enough to be terrifying, just enough to leave them uneasy. Now we don't. We were just on our way, the captain immediately babbles. Half of the crew nods emphatically while the rest still waits for their intellects, such as it is, to come back to life. I find it both admirable and slightly disappointing that some people would exert common sense 10 minutes after committing an act of piracy on a well-patrolled trading lane. Oh no, be my guess. I insist, I finish in a lower pitch. I charm all of them at once and force a step forward. I hear a few muttered prayers. A white noise rings in my ear as they do so. First order of business, you will return his weapon to my friend. Now. The captain mechanically throws the Colt to Sheridan, who grabs it with relief. His anger abates. Good. Now, I'd like to know whose brilliant idea it was to attack this specific ship. Silence. No privateer with 2 bits of sense would risk what you risked boarding us, so I will ask again, who decided it would be a good idea to attack us? What are you all doing? Let's kill the bitch. A voice declares from somewhere. Finally, someone with a spine and no brain on top. The culprit is revealed when his brave companions take a step away from him. He is an angry one, I can tell, skin carmine and eyes bulging. I can feel the violence underneath. He is a man used to it. Oh. And how would you proceed? I ask him. After taking a few seconds to process the question, he steps forward and takes out a pistol with unnecessary flourish. I get a good view of the badly maintained barrel when he waves it under my nose. I should kill him just for that. Enough of your bullshit, woman. Shoot. Silence, once again, descends upon the rabble. Shoot, I repeat. I am curious. I know that this will not kill me. I do wonder how much it will hurt, however. A tiny part of me thinks this is ridiculous, that I should just kill them and be done. The rest is bored, and knows that boredom is a dangerous thing. I need a little bit of play, a tiny hunt, something to keep me on my toes. Being shot in the face by a pirate might just be the thing. Shoot, you poo, a click. I watch, mesmerized, the powder ignite when the frizzen hits the rusty pan. White. Something blows into my face. It feels like being slapped, burned, and stung at the same time. Ow. 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 All right, ow. That hurt. I open my eyes, blink a little bit, and blow air out of my nose. Black powder rises, which I fan away with the back of my hand. The sailor and his mates let their jaws hang open, aghast. I realize that the bullet has come to rest against my left lower molars. I push it with my tongue. Hot. And vile. Ugh. I spit the piece of lead on the carpet. Somebody swears. My turn, I guess, I remark. I snap the shooter's neck and send his corpse careening against the hull, for intimidation and also because it really hurt. Reminder to self, avoid the cloud of heated powder whenever possible. I grab a handkerchief and wipe my face, trying to digest the latest piece of information. Normal bullets no longer harm me. At all. I have changed so much in the past 30 years. I have gained many advantages. Sheridan's presence reminds me that I have lost some as well. I should rejoice at the disappearance of one more weakness, and yet I cannot help but wonder what the cost was. I used to be more human, at first. I think. I find it hard to remember how it felt. I have forgotten. I return my attention to the present. I do not want melancholy to get its apathetic grasp on me. Where were we? Ah yes, you were going to tell me why you attacked my ship, before I paint the room red. The following interrogation is as inspiring as it is unpleasant. With every minute those idiots spend here increasing the risk of having to delouse and fumigate the entire room. They were ordered to intercept us by a contact in a small port called Casablanca, in order to retrieve any cargo we might be carrying, including the more peculiar ones. I suspect some rogue cabal fishing for artifacts with disposable assets. Isaac is going to have a field day. He loves to pull the string of clues until he reveals a fat, secretive lumps of rich bastards who think themselves smart. I understand. And you saw no problem with taking the contract, I summarize while tapping a talon on the coffee table. The captain has the decency to look embarrassed. His men huddle behind him smelling of fear and piss. More muttered prayers form an irritating drone at the back of my mind. This world is vast, and filled with dangers, I continue. Take it from someone who had survived for a long time, the most important thing you must know when stealing from someone is to know who, exactly, that someone is, and whether or not you can afford to cross them. Some companies will learn of a stolen shipment, write it down in their balance sheets, and contact their insurer. That would be the majority. There are others, like the Rosenthal Consortium, to whom this ship belongs, that need to protect their reputation. It means vengeance. It means that they will hire pirate hunters or... I lean forward and this time I show my fangs. Things like me, to send a clear message. That is why you little newts should have known better. I lean back. But since I am feeling generous, I may consider letting you go if you play just a few games. Well, most of you, in any case. Hope shines in their yellow, bloodshot eyes. First order of business, you are going to thin your own ranks. I start with a grisly smile that hints at unspeakable horrors and advanced psychological torture. The captain whips his pistol out and points it at a tub of lard of a man with filthy blonde hair, pulls the trigger, then brains him. All over my books. My precious books. Covered with brain matter from a man with the cortex of a dead opossum. My only rampart against boredom. Soiled. By the watcher, you cockless little arg. You should have waited for me to state the bloody rules. What is wrong with you lot? I am already grabbing my spear when a voice interrupts me, a warm baritone with a Texan accent. That's enough, Ariane. Let them go. How dare he? My anger surges, then dies like a wave against a rock, broken by instinct and belief. Sheridan is here for me. He is merely playing his role. I said I may let them go, I hiss. No more semantics. If you were to kill them, and that was your prerogative, you should have done so from the get-go. Do not play cat and mouse with human lives, Ariane. Respect the spirit of your word. Semantics and tricks are part and parcel of what we are. I also mentioned several games, and I did say may. I do not believe that I am breaking the spirit of my word, as he said. I could argue with him. It would be a waste. Sheridan has decided to be my conscience. I do not need to be technically correct with him because he is on my side, and so I decide to let it go. The pleasure of killing them lost its appeal anyway. Leave my ship, I begrudge, and remember the rules, because another one of my kin might not be so generous. One gesture, and the heavy door unlocks behind the pirates. The room is blessedly devoid of disease carriers 5 seconds later. I consider that nothing prevents them from turning their guns on the ship, but I dismiss the concern. It will be night quite soon and the ship is sturdy. I will simply slay them all if they develop a collective case of insanity. I am worried about you, Ariane. You were not like this when we attacked the cult. We were on a schedule, I reply. I do not take as many risks playing with my food if there are lives at stake. Sheridan seems to accept my explanation, yet soon a new worry twists his traits into a scowl. Speaking of which, you have not, you know, fed from them? Yes. Well, someone ruined the mood and decided to let them leave. I see. He looks sheepish. I wave his concerns away. Do not worry yourself. That was no worthy hunt. I will simply drink from one of the volunteers, as always. I am convinced that there will be ample opportunities to hunt before this trip is over. Very well. Now please leave me. Right, good evening to you. And have someone come clean all that brain. I tell his retreating back. HMPH. Siren lowers her camouflage and point at the corpses. Nirari. Give. Flesh. Her raspy voice sounds strange in the open air. It also annoys me that, after me insisting that there would be no flesh for half of the trip and her looking at me like a child who claims the dog grabbed the cookie jar, her incredulity turns out to be warranted. I never fail to deliver, do I? Yes, yes. Just don't eat his liver, or you may suffer from alcohol-induced coma. Siren ignores my warning. She opens the latch and a blade of sunset light reflects on the side of the room like a long red gash. I hiss softly. I do not believe that I will ever forget the burn I got in Alexandria. And now I am bored and reminiscing, again. This is to be the most disappointing pirate experience of my life. This debacle also served to underline a few important details. Sheridan is not Dalton. He sees himself as my conscience and as my protector, someone who will steer me towards the light, the non-burning kind. I will never compare them aloud because it would be a pointless and harmful experience. The Texas Ranger was never meant to emulate another Mon. He has his ways, and that is fine. I will merely require a few adjustments in my expectations. I am also changing. Evolution of character is a natural thing, a comforting thing, because it reminds me that I am still learning and growing. At the same time, my recent tendency to play with my prey worries me. It could simply be the lack of true challenges in the last 2 months, at least since Lord Jarek stopped bashing my face in during our spars. It could also be an instinctual response. If my nature turns more cruel as time goes by, I fear that when the time comes to fight the 2 old monsters, I might choose to join forces with one of them instead. No. No, that would not be me. Toying with our praise qualifies us as whatever we are. I merely need to question my own actions. As long as I ask myself if my behavior conforms to the rules I set for myself, I will never be truly lost. As for boredom, I just thought of something. A few weeks ago, when I amused myself with that entertaining little band of thieves, I came across a mildly competent mindmage. I allowed him to enter my mind fortress so we could have a bit of fun together. I realize now that I could perhaps develop a more battle-oriented setup. It could be a lot of fun. I close my eyes and meditate. I am now in the palatial bedroom of the imaginary castle of my psyche. The Watcher casts its purple radiance on a chaotic landscape of mazes, statues and gardens. Strange white flowers bloom on the dark roots and thorns that form the fabric of this space. Time for a little bit of experimental landscaping. I spend another week like this, mostly occupied with experimenting with mental warfare. I do not even need a partner to practice on. My instincts can gauge the deadliness of my creations. I cannot wait for another mental confrontation. Then, one night, Sheridan wordlessly drags me to the deck. We watch the green and gray of the shore rise to a sheer cliff gently sloping towards a bay and its many buildings. The Rock of Gibraltar stands guard over the entrance to the Mare Nostrum and its ancient treasures. At long last. Europe,